Chamber of Commerce. That conversation is coming at 7:30 this morning, so stay with us. But before we get into all of those interviews and all of those questions and answers, we do want to start the day and look at some of the top stories this morning in our major newspapers.
All right, so starting off with the Eswatini Observer, leading stories this Monday on the 12th of January. But a post-shake-up leaves officers aggrieved. About 50 immigration officers have been transferred from major posts to smaller border gates. They complain over a lack of consultation, housing and relocation support. The Ministry of Home Affairs says officers were informed timelessly. And in other news, Eswatini's wife says we plan, but God prospers. And on another one, shock as man found dead, foot detached.
And our sports news, Derby Grit swallows glory. 10-man birds rule the city. That is, Nciba strikes as Swallows stretch their Derby stranglehold over Highlanders. While Sisonke stunned wasteful Green Mamba, that is Sisonke recording a memorable 2-1 victory over Green Mamba in the Premier League encounter that was played at Galanga Technical Centre yesterday. We do see in some of these photos a royal touch at Mbabane Derby, where the highly anticipated Mbabane Derby between Swallows and Highlanders attracted a star-studded crowd, which included Prince Majaha and Mbabane Municipal Council Chief Executive Gciniwe Fagutse. Nciba was named man of the match in that very big clash.
And on the Eswatini Daily News, leading stories this Monday, thousands weed Mazibege Royal Field. Regiments beat the rain to weed Royal Field in record time of 30 minutes, despite threatening weather conditions that could easily have brought the operation to a halt. And in other news, precautionary recall of Nestle NAN formula and over 10 million malengeni in estates still at Master's office.
Well, Eswatini Daily News Sport, Mbabane is red after Swallows midfielder Mancoba Nciba Vilagati scores 22nd minute goal as Birds claim 1-0 victory over bitter rivals Mbabane Highlanders in an enthralling league clash at Mavuso Sports Centre on Sunday. I'm impressed with Bull Stars, says Prince Majaha, while Mohamed Salah is closer to AFCON glory.
Right, and that's it for our newspaper headlines. It's 6 minutes after 6. We go for an ad break and come back with our first bulletin, Dinzaba.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kusile maswatla mahle siqhubeka neluhlelo lwethu ikusile breakfast show sicala nganathi tindzaba tetfu lomunye wetikhulumi emgcwabeni ke wa Princess Nunu Johnson uthi ngoluphi loluthandwa loluphetha ngekwethi kube khona lobulala lomunye. Johnson ufihlwe ngelisonto ekuseni kulandzela ukuthi agwazwe umyeni wakhe eMahlandla eMojane.
Bekulusizi nesililo kubangane umndeni nebantwana ba-Princess Johnson ngemigcibelo ebusuku emlinzelweni wekumfihla. Bangani bakhe-ke abawuvala umlomo ngetikhatsi letinhle lebabenato naye, kodwa-ke siphetho sempilo yakhe sangabi nguloko bebakucabanga. Letinye-ke tikhulumi titibophelele kunakelela abantwana lebasesebancane lesevele basele bete uyise nenina ngekucwabita kweliso nje. Kube lusizi-ke ngesikhathi sebaya kuyombuka kwekugcina ebhokisini. Tikhulumi-ke bete nganywa lusisi njalo nje uma tikhuluma ngempilo yakhe.
Hamba kahle Princess. You were such a wonderful friend to me.
She was a sister, a mother, a friend, a colleague. Someone lebesijista naye. Hallelujah. Someone lebeka khona kusidiscipline labantwana. Besakhalelana kona nje ukuthi nathi ikolo tiyavulwa. Who is going to do what she was doing?
It's so painful ukubona. What a beautiful soul. Ngimbona amahliphi kanje ngoba anje njengamanje. It's so painful to be together in the name of love. But at the end of the day, bese sesiyabulalana. Iluphi loluthando lesikhuluma ngalo?
Ngingathanda ukukhuluma nawe mfana mami. Ngingacela ukuthi iphathe kahle lokumake sekangeke. Ungakwendile lobo ongeke ukwenze maka sesekhona.
Tisachubeka-ke tinkulumo etinkulumeni umphathi luhlelo ucele bakaGininza lapho bekenze khona nabo kube khona labakushoko njengoba bebakhona elihlweni letikhulumi.
Kulesikhathi ngidawucela lotokhulumela bakaGininza.
Kubonakalisile-ke ungathi leshaya umnyama abekho, waphindze wacela-ke ukuthi uma bakhona abavele.
Bengicele bathandzekako lotokhulumela bakaGininza. Ukhona bathandzekako lotokhulumela bakaGininza singakachubekeli phambili. Nakangekho bathandzekako
Sekubonakele-ke ukuthi abekho bakaGininza lubese-ke luyachubeka luhlelo loya lapho ayobekwa khona endlini yakhe yekugcina, nalapho-ke kwaba lusizi kulabanengi. Kubika Giyani Msibi ngikamfishane.
Kunendvodza lesolakala ngekucwekezela ticashitayo itebele impahla yato endzaweni liyatiwa ngekwekwekutsi kukamthupha empolonjeni eMbabane. Indvodza ilaliswe esibhedlela eMbabane kulandzela kutsi ibanjwe iphindze ishawe ngemuva kwekwekutsi isolakale ngekweba bongcondvomshina labafaka ekhatsi i-laptop kanye nalokunye endlini yalesinye seticashitayo.
Nasifika kuleli khaya sithole letinye taleticashi tikhona noko atikatsanzi kuvela etithombeni tethu tasilandzisa ukuthi lo mkhuba sawunesikhathi lesidze wenteka kepha betide isiqiniseko sekuthi ngulona labacashe kuye lobagangelako. Tithi tacala kumsolana kasuka nato imphunga ngendzaba yesitebhisi sekucanca letasikhweta tasifaka kulenye yetindlu lengasebenti ngekusola kutsi letigangi tisebentisa sona. Tithi le ndvodza yaphindze yasikhiphela ngaphandle lesitebhisi yase yamisa kuletindlu letiticashile. Leticashi tithi lebekulahleka kakhulu kuletindlu tato ngiwo ema-laptop, tincingo, timpahla tendlu nalokunye. Tithi ngebusuku bangalesihlanu-ke tabese setiba nebufakazi tsite kutsi ngumastandi wabo lolo bagangelako. Sihlalo wemaphoyisa imango kulendzawo Billy Mabuza uthi sekukanyenti tikhala ngekucekezelwa ticashi takuleli khaya.
Semahlandla imibiko siyithola yakuleli khaya sesiyile nje lokunye sike sakuthola lokunye kusengakatholakali. Lomunye wakhala ngelicingo lakanokusho. Unfortunately sagcina selirecoverile. Kwaphindza kwaba nalomunye lapho khona kuthethwe i-battery lemoto. Lona-ke solo sisalipinga sengilokunye-ke kuthi kwalahleka tintfo endlini. Tinenge tintfo lengingabala ngingaqedzi labaye bakhale ngako ukuthi kuye kunyamalala endlini. Futhi kuye kubonakale ukuthi kude lapho kucekezwe khona ukuthi ngabe kuhatshuliwe noma kwendiwe. Inye-ke yaleticashi indlu. Izini elifastelo lelifile sebabathe bayalikhava phindze lichachwe kusho ukuthi bafaka sandla-ke kule lelincane lelapha edolo bavule. kude vele kubabethela ukukhomba khona ukuthi bebawabulala.
Kude-ke lophumele ebaleni ukuthi babe sebamentakani-ke lo mastandi njengoba asalaliswe esibhedlela nje. Lisekela lemchumanisi wamaphoyisa embubeni esive noSipho Mnguni uyivumile le ndzaba wathi noko bekusete loboshiwe futhi kusete nemacala ekulahlekelwa lavuliwe emaphoyiseni waluleka labo labalahlekelwe ukuthi bavele batobika emaphoyiseni. Kubika Mbonga Dube empolonjeni.
Kunendvodza lesolakala ngekucikezelwa ticashitayo itebele impahla yato endzaweni leyatiwa ngekwekuthi kukamthupha empolonjeni. Kanti-ke indzaba leyo lesicetsa kuyibukela lefaka ekhatsi ukuthi leyo ndvodza leyo ibese ibanjwa-ke ngilabo lebalala kule tindlu tayo bayishaya kumanje ilele esibhedlela sichubeka nato sive lesisebentisa umgwaco losuka eThawela ngaphansi kwenkhundla yasephondo uye kuyawuphumela kumalutha ngaphansi kwenkhundla kumangcongco longu-D91. Sithi-ke timvula letichubeka nekuna kuleli tichubela linyeva ekhatsi njengoba simo salomgwaco sichubeka nekwekuthi sibe sibi kakhulu. Lesive sithi lokhu kubuyisela impilo yaso emuva njengoba sikhona ukutithuthukisa kahle-ke nekwekuthi ngekungahambeki kahle kwalomgwaco.
Ngakusho kwetakhamuti takule nkundla yasephondo lo mgwaco sowunesikhathi lesidze ukulesimo lesibi kangangoba timoto tato tilimalela futhi. Tinsatheli talomsakato tithole lesinye sesive sihamba ngetinyawo kuyawugibela esikondiyeleni lesingaba libanga lelingetulu kwemakhilomitha langu-30 njengoba sithi tincola tekutfutsa sive atitfolakali ngoba tisayijabuleli le ndzawo njengoba nje lo mgwaco usewudzabuka netisele.
Lokungasisita ukuthi kulungisekele umgwaco noma ngaphandle komgwaco kude lokunye kusita
hambeki akusebenzeki njengoba ubona lina nje nyalo umgwaco uphelile kude lesingakwenda nayisiva sikhona ibanga nasekwenteka nje ngigcina ukuthi dasha sikhona ibanga
lapha nje besakhala nandla tethu nje leti siba momakhelwane bakulendzawo emanti besigubha lapha afika la alanthanyeni singakhona kwenda nusi usuyagubha lo mhlaba ubuyele la khathi na uthi uvale ngala kuvuleka ngala imoto tingakhona ikhamba amabhasi asime la kungakhona alale la sikangeni.
Siyacicelela nkosami uhulumende ukuthi amaninja asilungisele emabhloko manengabla la amancane lawile lana nawo lo mgwaqo ugubhekile wonke.
Lilunga lephalamende lenkundla yasephondo umhlonishwa Bonkosi Dube lithi balibandla lenkundla badzinga kubanjiswa nguhulumende kude lesive salenkundla sisitakale ngalomgwaqo.
Ngubona mgwaqo vele walaphondo nakuhambe D91 kusuke kume yonke umnotfo kume kuye tibhedlela kume konke msakade safa inyanza leyo nangumgwaqo D91 longahambeki sive asikhona kwenda lutho siyalima sive sikhuthele sibe sephondo la kunemasimu kuyalinywa akuna kunjena bese kufana lapha emasimini lo mgwaqo lo long-D91 msakade waphasiswa kulomgwaqo lokuthiwa border to border lo msebenzi lokuthiwa ke kufanele kube neprogram lesebenta imigwaqo ye-border to border. So nala kithi-ke msakade simele kubuka lo ukuthi solo siselukhalweni sive sasephondo siyakhala onke malawo ukuthi kani kuhamba kanjani ngoba umgwaqo kumele ukuthi soya-implementwa phela lo 2019 ukuthi vele umgwaqo wendiwe msakade.
Simtholile-ke emabhalane lomkhulu etiko letemisebenti lemikhulu netekuthutha Thulani Mkhaliphi lesikhulume naye ngelicingo wathi lo mgwaqo longu-D91 ungulomunye wemigwaqo leminyenti leyonakele kakhulu lapha eveni. Noko uhulumende uneluhlelo lwekucala kuyilungisa nathi imvula setithe gozololo. Kubika Mbonga Dube ePhondo.
Hulumende uthi utimisele kulungisa imigwaco lengahambeki. Leminye-ke imigwaco leseluhlelweni lwahulumende ngiloyo lothute nase-Summerfield lakhona kugcina khona litiyela kucala igravel uhlanganise umgwaco ithi abantu loseluhlelweni lwekufakwa litiyela nanawo.
Ngekusho kwelunga lephalamende lasenhlambeni umhlonishwa wamanzizwane lo mgwaco utawuba tigaba letimbili kanti isigaba sokucala bekumele ukuthi ngabe sicalile nyakenye ngenyanga yeLweti kwakhiwa. Uthi bubi balomgwaco buthikameta abashayeli njengoba ikakhulu nalinile akuhambeki kanike nanoma libalele nakhona akuhambeki. Wathi uyethemba ukuthi litiko litawucala kuwakha lo mgwaco masinyane nje.
Bese sine challenge kakhulu ku transport la kanje ukuthi sebayasaba nje banikati baleti moto kufaka la komakhumbi ngoba nawubuka vele nje Springs into leqhuka ungakapheli ngisho namalanga emavikana lamathathu funeka aphinze abuye ayothenga. Siyathemba lokuthi ngesibonge kakhulu idiko laka-Works ukuthi li-prioritize lo mgwaqo. Kukhona lesikuvako lokuthi usami sebamtholile sokontraki probably abantu asithulela kuleli viki ora lesitaliqala kusasa. Lesithemba ukuthi nawo maswati laniketwe lo msebenzi latawulekelela lesive sonke sale miphakathi ledutane la ukuthi manje isitakale phela itholathole kulawo malanga kusasetshenzwa lapha itholathole imisebenzi kutaba na-2 phases short nje bekune budget yale financial year ya 2025-2026 lapho khona la sikhona khona njalo sime khona nawusuka elangeni chicks utawufika khona la ngilo phase 1 wakhona kabe seke soyahamba la kusuka khona la sikhona khona uyohlangana nezithabana.
Mabhalanelo omkhulu etiko letemsebenzi lemkhulu nekutfutsathula nemkhaliphi ukuthi imigwaco itawulungiswa kuselihlelweni lwahulumende ukuthi ilungiswe lenye ifakwe litiyela.
Cishe live lonke nje kukhona lapha kunama-failures lamaningi khona. Sicela nje ukuthi bantu benkosi imane babeketele kancane tase livula masetehlile kakhulu sithathe siyalikhipha kakhulu luhla-ke inyalo likhavarisha nje lelive lonke lokuthi lelapho khona kube nama-failures khona sihlabe siresponda kanjani.
Konke-ke lokhu kugcile ekutheni sikhwama noma-ke sipashi sahulumende simenganani kodwa-ke kona kuselihlelweni ukuthi imigwaco ilungiswe kuteke kuhambeke. Lobikako nguGiyani Msibi ngisenhlambeni.
Kokotela uSile Simelane wasedlangeni ucela kunikelelwa ngalokuya ethunjini njengoba ayaphela emalanga angakadli yena-ke nebatukulu bakhe. Gogo ucela nelisito lweluphahla ngoba indlu ahlala kuyo ulala kuyo nebatukulu bakhe lolwenda ukuthi bangakhoni kuba nenzawo la khona bangaphekela khona uma batfuke bathola lokho lokuncane labangakudla.
Gogo Desulile Simelane wasedlangeni loneminyaka lengu-106 uhlala nebatukulu bakhe nabo lebabuke yena ukuthi abondle ngembasha yebantfu labadzala. Sichaza buve sakheke lomdzala sisi watala mhla ka-1 January 1920. Indlu ahlala kuyo-ke yona yesitina kodwa-ke ayisamulingani yena nebatukulu bakhe njengoba bonke balala ndzawonye. Lomnyeke wabatukulu bakhe lekungu-Anele Simelane ucelela gogo wakhe lusito nekudla ngoba nabo bede umsebenzi. Babukeke yena lomdzala kutsi abanake kantsi-ke kuthiwa uyihlephula kuyona leyo mbasha yebantfu labadzala naye-ke umntu lomdzala lenye ayifake kumasingcwabisane wakhe asaleke ete lutho.
Njengoba sade nje ukuthi umlilo umqokwa njengoba namhlanje kuyabanza uhleli lapha endlini kuba netinfo takhe la kaba busy ngato tinsanjana takhe ukuthi amane naye akhone kuba busy kulelo dladla kwayona lena ke lakiyo umflo omdzala nabakithi uyakhala nkosiyami akusiyona indle ngathi ivulavulekile njengoba ubona vele ukuthi kugcwele nkosiyami sekucela nje ukuthi esiveni semaswati nabakithi loyo lo holwa ngumoya mana phakamise nje sakhe isandla sakasekudla aphoselo lalishe esivivaneni ukuthi umflo omdzala nkosiyami asitakale ikakhulu-ke nakhona lapha ekudleni emandla akasafinyelela ukuthi umflo omdzala akhone-ke ukuthi naye akhone kulima.
Gogo Simelane-ke uthi lenye indlu ihlala umtukulu lokulijaha lakakhe leselikhulile kanti-ke lidladla lapho bebaphekela khona lona liwiswe yimvula.
Kude vele lapha ngihlala khona lo ngibona kunje vele ngilala khona la kunje ekubasa-ke kude bavele ngibasa kubo kuwile kude vele lokhu lokudliwako ngiyangikhwebule khona apha kuloku lesanikwa inkosi ngikhwebule-ke ngithengele ipaka.
Lo mnyeke wabatukulu bagogo lese bathi khokho kuye usafundza sikolo libanga leliphasi i-primary kanike naye kulamanye amalanga kudla ukucala aphindze akugcine esikolweni njengoba ekhaya kati ulala etiko. Lo ngaphosa litshe esivivaneni kulesimo semvula omdzala nebatukulu angashayela yena Anele Simelane enombolweni lesi 79804255. Lobikako nguGiyani Msibi edlangeni.
Kutemidlalo iqembu leMbabane Swallows selinyukele endzaweni yesiphohlongo kuyo indlebe ye-MTN Premier League kulandzela kushaya iMbabane Highlanders emdlalweni lomkhulu wemaqembu lamabili asedolobheni leMbabane ngeligoli linye ecanzeni. Umdlalo lebewudlalelwa enkhundleni yasemavuso kaManzini.
Lomkhulu wemaqembu elidolobha laseMbabane lebewugadwe ngilabanyenti ubona iqembu leMbabane Swallows lithola netoni leqembu leMbabane Highlanders ngaphasi kwendlebe ye-MTN Premier League odlalela enkundleni yasemavuso kaManzini. Esigabeni sokuqala noma lenkundla beyikhomba kuba lukhuni ukudlala kuyo njengoba litulu belina ngemandla kodwa-ke lamaqembu lamabili avela khomba kutimisela. ISwallows sikubengile khona kusebenzisa amathuba ayo kahle ngesikhathi Mancoba vele kade alivalele ikhathi ngemuva ukuthi nozinto eMbabane Highlanders Sisekelo Maseko asebenze ngektikhandle epalini ehamba embili iMbabane Swallows ngeligoli linye ecanzeni isigabeni sokuqala saphela kanjalo.
Watching the game here, is it a chance for Mbabane Swallows? Well blocked by Maseko. Whoa! It's in the net. Beautiful. Following his comments on social media, this is a chance to say Mbabane Swallows have taken a lead just 21 minutes into the game. What a goal. Lapses in concentration, Tony. Yeah. Would you talk about that?
Esigabeni sesibili iMbabane Swallows ithole ikhadi elibovu lelithole nguNjongo Mazibuko ngemuva ukuthi anyathele esiphamandla Maseko weMbabane Highlanders kwabita ukuthi iqala esigaba sesibili inabadlali abalishumi nje kuphela. Badlali beMbabane Highlanders batamile kufaka emandla kuthola ligoli kulinganisa kodwa-ke lo mdlalo uphele kanjalo inqobile iMbabane Swallows ngeligoli linye ecanzeni lokwende ukuthi inyukele endzaweni yesiphohlongo inemaphuzu lang-19 kuyindzebe ye-MTN Premier League.
The boys stick to our plan and we took our chance well early in the game and they were disciplined. I like the discipline they showed today and the character. Even when we were men down, we did not lose our shape, we did not lose our discipline.
Sidlala against iMbabane Swallows lebe si-expectile. It's just that akudasebenzeli ukuthi siconnect le magoli. Otherwise in terms of play, ayi sisitakele sisebenzile siyathi ukuthi kumele soqala phi sibhekephi.
Kulo mdlalo Mancoba vile kade wayeMbabane Swallows loshaye lona ligoli lenqoba kwawo lo mdlalo uthola umhlomelo we-man of the match wahamba ekhaya nemali engu-2,500 emalangeni. Emidlalweni lolandzelako iMbabane Swallows itawutholana neliqembu leNsingizi North Spurs kanti iMbabane Highlanders itawutholana neGreen Mamba. Balandzeli labebete kutobukela lo mdlalo balinganiselwa ngetulu kwetinkulungwane letintsatfu. Lo mdlalo bosakatwa bukhoma emsakatweni weSwatini TV. Lobikako nguLinda Dlamini na Fabrice Msonera kaManzini.
Ndingakwenza batethu tesiswati sitawubahlola timakethe sitawubuya sichubeke masinyane.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. We continue with our program. With President Nicolas Maduro deposed, President Donald Trump wants U.S. oil giants to revive Venezuela's energy industry. Though it's unclear who, if anyone, will take part in his plan, Chevron is already there. After the U.S. attack on the South American country and its rendition of President Nicolas Maduro, Trump said he wants to rebuild the country's beleaguered infrastructure. While the oil majors mull his and cheese, Chevron may have a distinct advantage since it's been operating in Venezuela for decades.
The United States has carried out a series of strikes against Venezuela, announcing the capture of Nicolas Maduro and his wife.
Nicolas Maduro stood in federal court and pleaded not guilty to narco-terrorism charges.
Donald Trump said his military buildup in the Caribbean and destruction of civilian boats there was about alleged drug trafficking. But following the U.S. attack on Venezuela, another reason has taken center stage.
The oil business in Venezuela has been a bust, a total bust, for a long period of time.
Everything that we've seen during his second administration has been consistent with his view that the U.S. energy dominance is key to his agenda.
We're going to have our very large United States oil companies go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, and start making money for the country.
But one U.S. oil company is already there and has been for decades.
Chevron produces about 25% of Venezuela's oil today, is the largest investor in the oil industry and in the country.
We've been in Venezuela for the last 100 years. Our presence there, we believe, is important for the local economy, the regional economy, the people of Venezuela.
This is a story about the extent to which a US oil company is willing to go through the trials and tribulations of geopolitics in order to stay in a country that has the world's biggest oil reserves.
Chevron has virtually no competition. It has no oversight. And so it's really a very unique situation.
So how did Chevron manage to stay in Venezuela when everyone else left? And what role could it play in the country's future if Trump gets his way?
Venezuela, on paper, has more than 300 billion barrels of oil.
Or roughly 17% of the world's known oil reserves.
Most of those reserves are in this vast deposit known as the Orinoco Oil Belt.
But there's even more potential underground.
The U.S. Geological Survey estimates that Venezuela has more than 1 trillion barrels of oil in place in the Orinoco Belt. To put it in perspective, the world, until today, has consumed about 1.5 trillion.
The chances are they are going to outlast the world's demand for oil, so effectively they are limitless.
And here in Venezuela, a forest of oil derricks grows from the water of Lake Maracaibo.
The golden age of the Venezuelan oil sector was in the 1940s to late 50s, early 60s. The bigger players were Exxon and Shell, but Chevron too made a lot of money basically exporting oil from Venezuela to the United States.
The situation couldn't last forever.
You had these social tensions start to come into play, like in many resource-owning countries around the world, where people start to question, are we as the resource owners benefiting enough from our oil reserves?
In 1960, Venezuela became a founding member of OPEC, a cartel of oil-producing countries that managed supply and thus prices. And by the mid-70s, these were skyrocketing. This brought enormous wealth into Venezuela. By the end of that decade, its entire industry had been nationalized into the company Petróleos de Venezuela, known as PDVSA.
People in Venezuela at that time lived quite prosperous lives. You had stories of secretaries flying to Miami for the weekend to go shopping. You later have beauty pageants and things like that Venezuela sort of became known for, sort of showy wealth.
PDVSA became one of the most successful state-run oil companies, But there was a limit to how far it could operate on its own.
The government wasn't reinvesting enough in these oil assets, causing them to be run down.
And remember the Orinoco Belt? Those reserves come with a caveat.
Almost all of that oil is just too heavy, too sludgy to get out of the ground. In fact, it doesn't move without some sort of diluent to allow it to flow. Unlike, say, the lighter oil that comes from Saudi Arabia, Venezuela at that point really needed that foreign private investment, a whole lot of expertise, a whole lot of capital to get it out of the ground, to process it, and to get it to market.
The government decided to open up its oil industry back to the oil majors.
And Venezuela was still attractive. Even today, heavy oil, mainly from Canada, makes up more than half of U.S. crude imports.
Refiners in the Gulf Coast of Texas and Louisiana like Venezuelan heavy oil because their refineries were optimized for that type of oil.
In 1998, Hugo Chavez, a former military officer who had been imprisoned for a failed coup d'etat, won the presidency. His victory ushered in a wave of new state controls.
He passed a number of laws in the early 2000s, which effectively meant that PDVSA, the state-owned oil company, had to own a majority share in all the joint ventures across the country.
The two bigger American companies, which were Exxon and Conoco, decided to leave the country to not upset the new terms that Chavez had imposed, and basically they went into international arbitration.
Chevron, however, took a different approach.
Chevron's Venezuelan business was led by Ali Mashiri, who ran their Latin American operations. He had a very strong personal relationship with Hugo Chavez. This was really the beginning of kind of a special relationship between Chevron and Venezuela that no other foreign oil company enjoyed.
To give you an idea, 20 years later today, Conoco is still owed, for example, more than $10 billion from the awards of arbitrations.
When Hugo Chavez was elected, oil prices were only $25 a barrel. So while he was enacting this period of reforms, oil prices rose up to a record high of $146 a barrel.
But the oil revenue was mismanaged and went into other government spending.
Chavez was running deficits of almost 20% of GDP in the middle of the high price peak.
The amount of corruption that quickly developed, the amount of mismanagement of the oil industry was quite dramatic.
This was the situation Nicolas Maduro inherited when he took office following Chavez's death in 2013.
So the economy was already in deep trouble and it went into a tailspin. It basically reached hyperinflation.
And it remains a persistent problem that, for outside observers, is near impossible to gauge. Bloomberg's Café con Leche Index, as the name would suggest, tracks just one item, a cup of coffee. Its price has increased 587% over the past 12 months.
Across the country, people's savings started to get wiped out. There was huge economic disarray. This caused a groundswell of protests domestically.
Tens of thousands took to the streets of Venezuela today, demanding that aid be allowed to flow into the country,
which Nicolas Maduro clamped down on pretty hard.
This shows how Venezuela's contribution to the world's oil supply dwindled during this period. Meanwhile, Donald Trump was in his first term and took a decidedly hardline approach, backing opposition lawmaker Juan Guaido's bid to take control.
Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President.
Trump imposed financial sanctions in order to exert pressure for some kind of positive change within the country. Initially, they did not touch the oil industry, but later Trump heightened those sanctions. This is a major problem now for Chevron.
But the company managed to preserve its assets. And when Joe Biden became president, even more leniency was granted, and production bounced back.
The Biden administration said, we're going to try carrots and sticks to try to coax Maduro into reversing some of that democratic backsliding, to hold free and fair elections. One of those carrots was Chevron.
This helped stabilize the country's economy.
Chevron brings in dollars to the economy and helps to reduce inflation.
That Chevron's been allowed continuous operations underscores just how central its presence has become to Venezuela and the U.S.
Chevron has been making the argument for years that if it is forced to pull out of Venezuela, U.S. adversaries will simply move right in. And here it's talking about China, it's talking about Russia. And this argument has been very persuasive in some circles in Washington, which is part of the reason why Chevron has stayed for as long as it has.
And now all eyes are on how much it and other oil companies might be involved in what happens next. But fully exploiting Venezuela's oil resources won't be fast, and there's no clear financial incentive to do so.
Oil prices actually notched their worst annual decline since 2020 this past year. Part of the reason for that is the oversupply in the market right now. Some analysts estimate it could take a few months to return production to above maybe 1 million barrels a day, but over the long term, it's going to take upwards of $10 billion a year for a total of maybe 10 years to bring Venezuela back to its peak production levels seen in about the 70s.
Oil companies are no stranger to challenging environments, but the political instability, the environmental liabilities, the really precarious state of the infrastructure, the crime, it's a very, very tough place to be.
A big part of what we're all looking to now find out is whether the Trump administration will provide concessions that incentivize these companies to come back despite their past grievances.
We are going to run the country until such time as a proper transition can take place.
So while the international fallout from Trump's attack continues, and the future of Venezuela is incredibly unclear, there is a takeaway. Chevron may be the player facing the best odds.
Like many places in the world, we have to take a long view on our presence in countries like this.
Chevron is what Wall Street calls an option value. Now, this is a bit like putting one chip on the roulette wheel every single year. And you may not win this year, you may not win next year, you may not win the year after. But at some point, you will win. And when you win, you're going to win big.
All right, thank you for staying with us. It's 20 minutes before 7 o'clock. After the break, we're joined by Nicholas Kusile from the Royal Eswatini Police Service. Stay with us.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna sente ukukhiqiza ngokusembili.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Asimenzele sinimukele sikuvusele na usanza kusivulela sivedele ukuthi sizabe sicocisana nababa Nicholas Jelelo suka emaphoyiseni luhlangothi lolubuke dindzaba de fraud. Akumuleke ukuthi besinayo lapha kusachubeka yona i-festive season asexwayisa nakhona ngetindzaba de cybercrime ikakhulukazi nje bofacata. Sifuna kuva-ke ukuthi ingabe festive season ihambe kanjani abanganani ama-cases lakabikiwe nalamanye nje ama-cases afaka yona i-cybercrime. I think kunye la kuveta ngiyo indzaba yama online investment scams kanye nabo ATM card kuningi nje lokundeka kovele uma kuphitsitela babetshela sikuvusele sikwemukele siyabonga sibe naso lomhla ekseni siyanibona vele niyasebenza solo niphishanekile nifuna kuvalela bonke bofacata laba khona even kumbe nje kusethulela nje sithombe ukuthi kusebenzeka kanjani kule festive season lesibuya kiyo dibeti ngana nje tinombolo tebantu laba khona kubika ukuthi bagebengiwe.
Sibonga kakhulu lungelele sivusele kiso sive semaswati kuphinda kuphi lapho sibukele khona lo msakato. Singasho nje kuthi cha kuyabonakala ukuthi ligalelo lemaphoyisa nema stakeholders kuleti ndzaba leti likhulu kakhulu lokhu ke kusitshelwa tinombolo letikhombisa ukuthi kule festive season nje yodwana siyayithola tinombolo leti sibang 11 kuphela abantu labafacatisiwe bekunene. Lesithi ke le nombolo isese inkulu ke empeleni uma ubuka lokuthi njengenyanga inye mhlawumbe nisekunebantu labangako abalahlekelwe imali sithi asichubeke futhi sicwayise esiveni semaswati kusibe kunene siyathi kusilose kusihlasele kakhulu njenyalo kulenyanga le lesisuka kiyo ya December kube indzaba yalo ekunene loshaya enga true caller awube kunene siyachubeka futhi siyawacwayisa emaswati ukuthi emaphoyisa wasebenzi kanjalo malangeni lamahle siyacela ukuthi singede samkholwa lo ekunene lositshela kuthi uluphoyisa noma sokuthi utama kumbutabuta lokunenga bese ukhomba kucasuka bekunene bona lapho nje sakusilo luphoyisa leluvela udrop lento uhlukane nayo lo ekunene umblock bese uyasiniketa singemaphoyisa leyo nombolo akayisebenzisile ngaso leso sithombe mhlawumbe noma ngayo le emblem emaphoyisa siyacela sicwayisa sive semaswati bekunene ningethuswa siyi emblem emaphoyisa lelevela lapha isuke ingasiyo kodwa i-emblem mbumbulo leyakhiwe lokwendelwe ukuthi empeleni kuluthwe ingcondo debantu kuze batokholwa kusinembala bakhuluma neliphoyisa lungelele.
Yeah, siyathi babetshela ukuthi nga December kuba kuningi lokugiyelana kwetimali sitokfeli nani laba giyelana kudla ingabe emacases alohlobo lolo niwabone abenganani this festive season.
Sibonge lungelele nanawo akhombe kwehla empeleni uma sibuka nje ngoba sibena mabili kulo December kepha ke lokusethusile ukuthi nasingena nje kuJanuary bese liba khona lenye ireport lekhona futhi yawo lamacala la njengalawo bekunene ngiko ke sitawuthi namhle kusene emaswatini njengoba kunguJanuary malangeni lamahle siyacela siyanxusa isiveni semaswati ukuthi imali adingahlali phase emicamelo njengoba sihlale vele sikusho lokho sicela ukuthi sive semaswati mane imali sitifake emabhange bekunene hambani niye emabhange avule tandla onke emabhange aseswatini kuze ukuthi bomake bestokfel bakhona ekusitakala malangeni lamahle lokho kuyakwenda ukuthi bonkosi singadikhanzi mhlawumbe egcineni kwako konke silahlekelwe konke lesikusevile umnyaka wonke siyacela kwanxusa emaswati nyalo ngoJanuary asingasendi isiphosiso lonyaka ukuthi kulo 2026 phinze kube khona bucala lokunjengalobo nekwe ukuthi bokunene vele siyabalinga labo treasury bethu bagcina sebasetinkingeni ngoba imali ihlala ivuthiwe ihlala ilungele kusetshenziswa bekunene futhi imali sibokwathi kusibo bakangwane imnanzi kuwo wonke umuntu imnanzi esigebengweni imnanzi nakumfundisi wonke umuntu imali iyadleka bekunene siyacela siyanxusa emaswatini asingabalingi bekunene asihambeni vele sivule ema-account emabhange ukuze sitokhona kusitakala egcineni kwako konke phela siyithole lenzuzo yethu lebe solo siyisevela umnyaka wonke.
Yeah, nalawunye lebe ngiselo ngikubona nje babejilelo wakhuluma ngako last year ngiyo indzaba yama online scams. I think indzaba kakhulu yema links kwavama nje lenye le yaka Eswatini mobile ye competition ukuthi answerisha question. I think ngike ngayitfollow nami wamlabaningi bebangisendela yona engabe nayo leyo ingode kanganani babetshilo lokuthi umuntu akuthumelela nje ilink noma kuthumelele isithombe sokuthi join na competition yenkampani thide ingabe nako lokho kuvame kanganani kundeka kanganani kulamalanga.
Siyabonga tsatse wethu uvele ngalesikhathi lesibhizi kuyendeka kakhulu ngesikhathi setekuthenga nje kuyendeka kakhulu bekunene but sicela kuveta isiveni samaswati ukuthi inhloso yakho lento lena ufacata nje le link lapha basuke bafuna imininingwane yakho yasebhange kahle kahle kusho ukuthi ngalabanye amagama singathi ngalesi cyber phishing scam lesikhuluma ngayo basuke bafuna kudonsa noma kudweba yonke lemininingwane yakho lobhanga ngayo inhloso lenkulu ngileyo bekunene labavama kuyendela kona ngakho siyacela isiveni samaswati ukuthi awu sichubeke futhi singayifaqati ilink lesingayadi nalesingayiconzi kahle noma ngabe ientisa kangakanani tibude imibuzo leminenge inhlanhla basebenzisa inkampani letikhona la eSwatini netitolo letinkulu letikhona la eSwatini kulula ungasatha licingo ubahle uhlole ukuthi lokho ingabe vele niyakwati bekunene kusuka kinini ngaphambi kokuba ufaqate any link lekhona lapho ngoba once wayifaqata le link bekunene siyathi lokho ukuthi vele sekwese bakufake ngabeka ngithi ngemagama lasintu nje usuke bakufake emuhumeni lothide lose ubathe ufuna kuphuma kiyo so ufuna ukuthi uphendule the next question uphendule the next question until ugcine ukhiphe yonke information mhlawumbe leconzane nawe sithi asiwaceleke maswati bekunene asingathatheki kalula etinfeni leti njengaleto tingoti kakhulu
yeah sengifaqatile ke sengenile kule link babejele ingabe kukhona indvele lengakwenta kuzama ukugcina information yami ukuthi ibe safe ile kumele ukuthi ngiyende nasengibonela ukuthi vele awu sekungonakalele sengingenile kule link
siyabonga dzadzewethu info longayenda ukuthi nase kuvela lemibuto lese ifuna imininingwane yakho ekakhulu kahle lesi personal ungayiphendule umbuto leyo kodwa ulwele ukuthi gadget yakho ungamane uyirestart lokungenani uqalele phasi uphindze uyirestart ngoba nase uyirestartile so uphumile kule nkinga lesibhekene nawo so ngongise emaswatini akithi bekunene siyacela ukuthi vele singayifaqati le link kodwa nabe sengiyifacile angirestart icingo lwami ngicale kabusha
yeah kuyavakala babetshele kepha sebangakhe nje bamfulase senilesen khona ukuthi nibabophe bona laba bafaqata laba sejele nje kumanje
laba sejele losikhuluma kumanje sebangu 89 bantu labakhona ejele lababoshiwe sijahe ku100 vele masinyane uma ngabe solo bachubeka bekunene lokujabhisako ukuthi labanye ngilase baphume ngebail sebabuyela kwesibili ngekhathi kodwa ke thina emaphoyisa kuyasijabulisa ngoba sebasinikete eligalelo lelitawuthi sikhone kulubeka enkantolo yemthetho ukuthi lo ekunene ebe out on bail waphinzwa wachubeka futhi wenda bona lobo bucala lo sekusiniketa ke manje emandla ekutheni vele inkantolo imgcine ngekhathi angede akhona ukuthola inkululeko yakhe bekunene bayi abuse inkululeko yabo labanye ngosithi nje Solomon siyababopha vele siyachubeka siyaphambili asibatshele futhi nalabanye bekunene laba sasolo bachubeka nalomkhuba sinoma kanjani iyawula libonene
yawula libonene ngicela sinalenye lebalekile babejele njengoba sekutavula tikolo nje bo next week badali baphishanekile basemadolobheni basemabhange bafuna ukubhadala school fees ingabe lilize ngalabo bolandela livame kanganani yini mhlambe baqale kumele ukuthi bayicaphele kulesikhathi lesi lokuba salungiselela nje kuyobhadala school fees
sibonge kakhulu Mthombeni nembala oyinsatheli elihlonze insatheli that is worthy her salt thank you so much for asking this question kulesikhathi lesinjengalesi lesibekunene asisho ukuthi sikhathi sekubuyela etikolweni back to school lesikhathi sekuphithitela lokunengi kakhulu siyafisa ukuthi emaswati siwacayise emikhakheni lemibili umkhakha wekucala bekunene asingeke sisho ukuthi bolandela sebaphela bolandela Solomon bakhona ngoba lona lithuba mhlambe labalithola njengaleli bekunene nangabe siya emabhange sicela kucizelela ukuthi vele asitameni kwekuthi singakhiphi izumbulu tetimali siyobhadala kodwa asitransferele imali ngekhathi sisebenza emabhank apps ethu ekutheni nisibhadale etikolweni nase siwatholela uma accounts nema deposit slip bekunene nekwekuthi ke bakangwane siyacela noma ngabe ke sewuselayinini uyawubhadala lo cash wakho ebhange laleso sikolo sakho liline noma lithe kangakanani maswati akithi siyacela ukuthi ungene ngekhathi singabavumele mathabela ngoti latawufika akutshele ukuthi njengoba wena sewukhulile futhi ula elayinini bona bakhona la kusibakuside bacela ukuthi ubanikete lo cash wakho bahambe bayokubhadalela bese babuya ne deposit slip bungoti lesibubonile Mthombeni in the past kwekuthi ukhanza msiso lo muntu omdzala somniketile lo muntu le mali lo cash wathi sithe abuye ne deposit slip legcotshiwe lo muntu omdzala akholwe ukuthi vele igcotshiwe idepositiwe imali ebhange only to find ukuthi nasesikolo sireconcile libito lemfana yakho alisekho lapho ngoba imali yakhe ayizange ingene lo ekunene wasebenzisa sitembu mbumbulu lesakhiwe lapha phasetihlahla bekunene kuze kwekuthi sitewulutha abantu kube sengathi salelo bhange kanti asesiso siyacela kuwacwayisa eMaswati kulesikhathi lesiphithitelako se-back to school asingeneni ngekhathi ema-banking halls bekunene sikhiwishe khona sihambe sibhadale kubothela sithi bonele thina ukuthi vele siyinikete longale kwe-cubicle umuntu le mali ngekhathi ebhange bekunene singavumeli kusitwa ngumuntu longaphandle noma lochamuka ngaphandle kwelibhange athi uyawusisita asidepositele ngoba unema-connection kunjani njani ema-line mathe siyacela bekunene sibeketele kubhlungu kakhulu umntwana nasa abuye ekhaya athi esikolweni bathi takabhadali kanti wena ungumntali wathi ukuthi ubhadele uthi uyahamba naleso siliphu sakho phela losigcinile wena uya elokhwanjaneni esikolweni bafike bathi awu abanayo lenzaba yakakho nakuhlolwa nasebhange ukuthi awu nani lenzaba lena ayindekanga la ngekhathi ebhange lesitemba siso selibhange bathi bekethe izathu tapa akuba bhlungu kakhulu bekunene siyacela eMaswati nakithi ukuthi awusibeketeleni singene ema-banking halls silasishaya ima-line kahle sihambe siyobhadala kubo-bank teller.
Yeah, njengoba usho nje babetshela ukuthi vele nakhona lokuphatha cash nako kuyingodi nokuthi nemali ibe ku-banking app kuyingodi ngalokuthi basishayela basifacatise engabe la kule banking app nakhona singadiphephisa kanjani imali tethu kuze bangakhona ukusifacatisa.
Siyabonga Mthombeni umuntu akasho bekunene ukuthi ema-banking apps emabhange akithi aphephile kepha la sithole khona ukuthi kunesikhala ngiwo ema-customer elibhange ngiwo lakhipha le information anikete labantu ababafacatisako ngiwo lavumako ukuthi angene ku-banking app alalele lolo bafacatisako abatshele ukuthi abentene kuma-banking apps abo ngaphandle kwaloko bekunene i-banking app yethu iphephile yawo onke amabhange lakhona eSwatini lesingakucela eMaswatini kwekuthi awu bekunene akubete umuntu ngoba nelibhange elicobolwalo lingeke likutshele kwekuthi facata ini ufacate ini ku-gadget yakho hamba ungene ku-banking app wente nakho nanako bekunene uma ngabe kunelusito lolufunako hamba ngekhathi ebhange ucele lelo lusito ukuze bakhone ukukusita utoba nesiciniseko ngoba laba labasishayela kona labasifacatisako bekunene usuke kumuntu longamadi lokuthi vele uliphoyisa yini vele usebenta ebhange yini vele usebenta enkampanini yabumahlale ekhukhwini yini lo muntu lokhulumako usuke ungenazo siciniseko saloko ngiko ke sithi akubede umuntu longakufacatisa bekunene noma kungayiphi indlela futhi ke Mthombeni sebakele mini laba bekunene kangaka kuba sebakhona nekukubolekisa le mali ngayo le banking app yakho bakufundzise ukuthi ungaboleka kanjani online uthi khanzeke ukuthi vele sewuyaboleka online ngoba emabhange akithi alwela ukuthi alethe iservice kubantu ngendlela le convenient laba bekuneneke afunza kuqala leti indlela bese uyakuskula yena so uyakutshela ukuthi ngena kanjani uboleke wente njani emva kwaloko naseyingenele imali akubuthi seyingenile imali uyavuma uyaconfirm okay le nombolo levela lapho ithini so uyamniketa kanti phela so umniketa le nombolo le imfihlo lokungakafanele uyinikete umuntu ngiyo lele kwenta wena uaccess le mali yakho so uniketa yini utathu ubone ngema message noma ngemlayeto lesengene ecingweni lakho ukuthi kusokunemali eseyiphumile siyacela eMaswati akithi ukuthi siwacwayise kakhulu bekunene kuloko singabaniketi bolandela lithuba njengoba iBhayibheli lisho singamniki isathana indzawo bekunene
kokugcina nje babetshela 1 minute kume nje ama-trains la savamile kulamalanga laba usebenzisako lekumele ukuthi siwacaphele sisive ngabe kumaphi.
Sibonge kakhulu Mthombeni njengoba sisho ukuthi tindzaba vele teku-investor online tindzaba leti khona siyathi usiloko kusuka nje umnyaka vele batawufuna kwekuthi si-investe online sicele kucwayisa futhi nabo laba sebathatha umhlala phasi banetimali letitsite kuyenteka kwekuthi emathabela ngoda agcine asati lokuthi awulungelele sowuthethe umhlala phasi uthethe sizumbulu sakhe bese sewuthola tincingo ke lesethi kuniketa ema-opportunities eku-investor online noma ke ku-investor noma ngabe ngikuphi ke bekunene awu siyacela Maswati akithi eMaswati lamane ngasalimele kulohlango silolo sicela kwekuthi ungakakhomithi imali yakho dinetise kwekuthi ingabe vele lapho uyisa khona le mali kuliciniso yini Maswati lamahle
ngiyavakala sibonga kakhulu babetshele mbukeliso ukuthi vele kwekuthi asicaphele na lonyaka sicaphele digebengu fire cards bofacata ikakhulu kade injinyalo lokusekutawuvula tikolwa batawutargeta batali emabhange sivele sicaphele singadikhanzi sifacata timvu letingekho sesilkefo sabuya khona manje.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with us at 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at international news. Kyiv residents huddled against bitter winter cold inside their unheated apartments on Saturday as engineers struggled to restore power, water and heat knocked out in the latest salvo of Russian strikes. Some have been forced to choose between eating a hot meal or keeping warm. Their discretion is advised on the following story.
Damaged buildings and rubble line the streets of this residential area in Slovyansk after it was hit by a Russian bomb, wounding several people.
It happened around 12:30. A glide bomb fell. About 5 civilians were injured.
Over in Kyiv, many residents are battling the cold after a salvo of overnight Russian strikes into the small hours of Friday knocked out power, water and heat. This is the case for 85-year-old Serhiy, who has no choice but to melt snow in this bucket for water.
Before the strike it was good, normal warmth, we had everything. Until they turn the heating back on, I'll have to sleep in my clothing.
Some have been forced to choose between eating a hot meal and keeping warm.
These little gas canisters, we use them to heat things up. Today we will cook something to eat because we haven't cooked anything for 2 days already.
The strikes claimed at least 4 lives in Kyiv and left around half of the capital's apartment blocks without heating. On Saturday, officials stated that power was coming back online in parts of the city, but that the situation was still difficult.
Syria's Kurdish fighters said on Sunday that they agreed under a ceasefire to withdraw from Aleppo after days of fighting government forces in the city. Hours earlier, Syria's military said it had finished operations in the Kurdish-held Sheikh Masjid neighborhood, with state television reporting that Kurdish fighters who surrendered were being abused to the north.
Dozens of Syrian security force vehicles enter the Kurdish-majority Sheikh Masjid neighborhood of Aleppo, sparking fears among locals of the worst to come. Previously under the control of the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces, the area has been steadily encircled by the Syrian army. Trapped inside due to days of intense fighting between the Syrian army and the Kurdish SDF fighters, residents have been forced to flee their homes, with local mosques opening their doors to shelter the displaced.
I asked my family about the fighting. They said they couldn't sleep because of the bombing. People were even firing from their roof.
I left my 3 children with my neighbor, but now I can't reach her. I just want to reach my children, nothing else.
After 5 days of deadly clashes in Syria's second-largest city, a ceasefire agreement has led to the SDF forces withdrawing from Aleppo.
Through international mediation to halt the attacks and violations against our people in Aleppo, we have reached an understanding leading to a ceasefire and the safe evacuation of martyrs, the wounded, trapped civilians, and fighters from the Ashrafiyeh and Sheikh Masjid neighborhoods to northern and eastern Syria.
The violence, which was centered around the Sheikh Masjid and Ashrafiyeh neighborhoods, erupted after the collapse of a March agreement intended to integrate Kurdish autonomous institutions into the central government. Since Bashar al-Assad's fall in December 2024, the government of Ahmed al-Sharaa has pledged to protect minorities, but it continues to struggle with massacres of Alawites and anti-Druze violence.
Iranians living overseas rallied in London, Berlin and other major cities on Saturday to protest the Islamic Republic and show solidarity with a mass demonstration in Iran. Meanwhile, inside the country, videos circulating on social media showed protesters once again taking to the streets overnight in several cities nationwide.
A protester in central London scaled the wall of the Iranian embassy to replace the modern Iranian flag with the pre-revolutionary flag of the Iranian monarchy. Hundreds gathered in central London, many of them members of the Iranian diaspora.
We're all here today because we're wanting a free Iran. We've wanted this for 47 years, but we have been ignored. Our cries, we've been silenced.
Every Iranian here, there's 8 million Iranians outside of Iran. Every day they're going out to support the Iranians that are inside Iran right now.
This same flag flew in the Dutch capital, and protesters even brandished photos of Reza Pahlavi, son of the last Shah, the heir to a dynasty toppled in the Islamic Revolution of 1979.
I'm here for the Iranian people who are taking to the streets in Iran. Yes, I want to contribute too, so that people see that we're also demonstrating here. We may be far away, but our hearts are with Iran.
While on the Wittenbergplatz in Berlin, placards read, "Down with the Islamic Republic." This after the regime imposed an internet blackout in the country 2 weeks into an intensifying protest movement, leading to an eerie silence from Iran on Saturday amid a repression that had already proven deadly and left hospitals overwhelmed.
People are angrier and they don't care if they get shot now. They just want their freedom, their rights and their country back.
US President Donald Trump has repeatedly expressed a willingness to help the protesters, an ambiguous promise deplored by some and welcomed by others.
This regime will be destroyed by the people anyway, and I hope that Europeans and Americans will come to realize that we need their help.
Images filmed during the internet blackout show that protests in Iran continued undeterred on Saturday.
Civil liberties and migrant rights groups called for nationwide rallies on Saturday to protest the fatal shooting of an activist in Minnesota by a U.S. immigration agent as state authorities opened their own investigations of the killing.
Outside a hotel housing ICE agents, sounds of pots and pans, fireworks and honking cars echo throughout the night. Residents in Minneapolis are protesting against the Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents and their activities, following the shooting of local Renee Nicole Good by an ICE officer. The 39-year-old mother of 3 was shot dead on Wednesday, just blocks away from where the murder of George Floyd occurred in 2020. The incident left community members scared and outraged, with a makeshift memorial set up for Renee in the area. At a separate rally, local families expressed living in fear of ICE agents.
I'm scared for all of us right now. Certainly the impacts on my immigrant family and immigrant neighbors are terrifying, but we're also living in this is collective trauma for all of us.
A new video released shows the incident from the perspective of Officer Jonathan Ross, who fired the shots. He circles around Renee Good, who is sat in her car.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you. Show your face.
Her wife is outside the car, walking around filming the officer.
That's fine. U.S. citizen, former fucking president. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy.
The officer then tells Renee to get out of the car.
Get out of the fucking car.
She attempts to drive away from the officer, who then opens fire. Vice President J.D. Vance and Homeland Security have argued that this video shows the officer firing in self-defense. The Minneapolis shooting, coupled with a separate shooting in Portland by Border Control 1 day later, have sparked national outcry over the U.S. government's immigration enforcement.
A snow-lined street in the midwestern city of Minneapolis, where Renee Nicole Good was gunned down by an immigration agent on Wednesday, lies less than a mile from the site of another slaying that shook Americans.
At times, they are easy to spot, dressed in military-style camouflage. Other times, ICE agents move through the streets in masks and plain clothes. Their mission, to locate and remove undocumented immigrants from the United States. Immigration and Customs Enforcement was created after the September 11th attacks to strengthen national security, beginning operations in 2003. Today, it has field offices across the country, including major cities like New York, Los Angeles, and Houston. The agency has around 6,500 deportation officers, but is aggressively looking to expand. Fueled by legislation passed last summer, providing $76.5 billion, nearly $30 billion of which is earmarked for new staff to speed up deportations under President Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. New recruits undergo intensive training for 6 days a week for 13 weeks, covering immigration law, enforcement tactics, firearms, physical fitness, and arrest procedures. But the push to hire quickly has raised concerns about training standards for new recruits. Critics warn ICE may be too heavy-handed in its arrests, while NBC News reports that some recruits enter training before completing vetting, later failing drug tests, or not meeting physical or academic requirements. ICE maintains its officers are often the ones under attack.
U.S. President Donald Trump pressed top oil executives to invest in Venezuela's reserves at a White House meeting on Friday, but was met with a cautious reception, with ExxonMobil Chief Executive Darren Woods dismissing the country as uninvestable without sweeping reforms.
He's seeking at least $100 billion from oil giants to revive Venezuela's ability to fully tap into its vast reserves of petroleum. On Friday, US President Donald Trump promised more than a dozen oil executives total security if they invest, a week after the US seized Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro.
It's a whole different Venezuela, and Venezuela is going to be very successful, and the people of the United States are going to be big beneficiaries because we're going to be extracting, numbers of, in terms of oil, like, few people have ever seen, actually. So you're dealing with us directly. You're not dealing with Venezuela at all. We don't want you to deal with Venezuela.
Earlier this week, the White House said it aims to control Venezuela's oil indefinitely. Due to disinvestment, mismanagement and US sanctions, the country's oil production has fallen sharply in recent decades. Many of the executives suggested that they were poised to invest, but no significant financial engagements were immediately forthcoming, with one executive describing the South American country as currently uninvestable.
We have had our assets seized there twice, and so you can imagine to re-enter a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen and what is currently the state. Today, it's uninvestable.
As part of a wider endeavour to take control of Venezuela's oil, Trump confirmed on Friday that US forces seized a fifth tanker in the Caribbean Sea. The Trump administration insists it needs to control the country's oil sales to ensure it acts in the US's interests, including by lowering drug trafficking. Some Democratic lawmakers have denounced this approach as extortion.
Venezuela's government on Thursday pledged to free a significant number of prisoners in what it described as a gesture to seek peace. Officials have not identified or given a number of prisoners being considered for release, leaving rights groups scurrying for hints of information and families to watch the hours tick by with no word.
While families across Venezuela anxiously await the release of their loved ones held as political prisoners, the picture of a police officer emerged. Edison Jose Torres Fernandez, 52, arrested for allegedly sharing criticism of the regime last month. His death in prison was announced on Saturday. Human rights NGOs accuse those in power of being responsible. At least 800 people are being held in Venezuelan prisons for political reasons. This teenager was arrested at 17 for posting a video of a protest. Reunited with his family at last, This is the moment he hears about Nicolas Maduro's capture.
¿Sabes que Maduro ya no es presidente?
Sí. Emocional. No sabía nada de eso.
Lo capturó Estados Unidos aquí dentro del país el sábado. Hace una semana. En una operación. Está en una corte de Estados Unidos.
In Caracas, Nicolas Maduro's son said his father was doing well.
The lawyers have told us he's strong. He said, "We're not sad. We're not sad. We're doing well. We're fighters." Words that may comfort the modest crowd of a few hundreds that protested in Caracas to demand his release and to defy the U.S.
Our oil belongs to Venezuela. It belongs to Venezuela, not to any foreign country. And as Venezuelans, we will continue fighting. If they come to our country for our benefit, they will be welcomed, but we won't be intimidated by anyone.
With the resumption of international flights, the U.S. State Department on Saturday urged Americans to leave the country immediately. It said the collectivist armed militias are searching for U.S. citizens and people with ties to the U.S.
In a post on social media, Trump said it was a great honor to speak with the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, who called to explain the situation of drugs and other disagreements that we have had. I appreciated his call and tone and look forward to meeting him in the near future. Petro described the call, his first with Trump, as cordial.
An amicable phone call and an invitation to the White House, the unexpected rapprochement between Donald Trump and Colombian President Gustavo Petro comes after months of public feud, with both sides trading insults and threats. The U.S. president even revoked Petro's visa to the U.S. and removed Colombia from a list of allied countries in the U.S.'s anti-drug war.
Colombia is out of control, and now they have the worst president they've ever had. He's a lunatic who's got a lot of problems, mental problems.
Trump has repeatedly lashed out at Petro, claiming that Colombia isn't stopping drug production and is trafficking them to the U.S., suggesting the Colombian president could suffer the same fate as Nicolas Maduro, deposed by the U.S. Army at the beginning of January.
He's making cocaine, they're sending it into the United States, so he does have to watch his ass.
But on the ground in Colombia is one of the U.S. government's closest counter-narcotics relationships in the region. According to U.S. media, the Colombian National Police and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration work closely together to combat drug trafficking. The call between the two leaders marks a warming of relations between the two countries. At a rally of his supporters, Gustavo Petro reacted to his phone exchange with Donald Trump.
I explained to him that drug seizures had increased to the point that last year we seized 1,000 tons and that we will reach 3,500 tons by the end of my term.
The dramatic reversal from months of tensions was met with relief from local Colombians.
I think this is very good, and I hope it continues on this path, seeking understanding and agreements, knowing that war brings nothing.
We must act cautiously and make the most judicious decisions, defending our autonomy and sovereignty.
While the date has yet to be set for Petro's visit to Washington, his presidential term ends soon, with the next election due in May.
Greenlanders are voicing concern after U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday again suggested the use of force to seize Greenland as he brushed aside Denmark's sovereignty over the autonomous Arctic island. Denmark and other European allies have voiced shock at Trump's threats to take control of Greenland, where the United States already has a military base.
All appears calm on the streets of Greenland's capital. But some residents are concerned about US President Donald Trump's threats to annex the country.
We must finally move away from the president's verbal attacks. Since Trump took office a year ago, we have been in a constant state of psychological warfare. We have never experienced anything like this in Greenland before.
Greenland and its owner, NATO member Denmark, have denounced Trump's comments. Yet thousands of kilometres away, the US president has reiterated his goal to own the semi-autonomous territory, which has a population of around 57,000.
I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
In Nuuk, residents interviewed by Danish reporters were adamant that the island is not for sale.
He could never buy us. Ever in my life, I would...
500,000?
No.
A million?
Not...
You can say any number, but
any number in the world, and we'll know. And we'll say no. It belongs to us and only us only.
Some did not hesitate to show their discontent. This drugstore sells caps in the same colour as those worn by Trump supporters. But the embroidered slogan, "Enough is enough," is directed squarely at the US leader.
We want peace to return. We do not in any way want Greenland to be for sale anywhere.
Trump has argued that Greenland is crucial for US national security and that the US needs to own it to stop Russia and China from doing so. He has alleged, without evidence, that it was, quote, covered with Russian and Chinese ships all over the place. Denmark has warned that any military action from the US would result in the end of the transatlantic defense alliance.
The Trump administration is pulling the United States out of dozens of international organizations, including key UN agencies and the treaty underpinning global climate talks, marking a deepening retreat for multilateral cooperation and drawing sharp criticism from diplomats and climate experts.
The United States is cutting ties with international organizations yet again. On Wednesday, President Trump signed an executive order to withdraw US support from 66 global organizations and treaties, about half of which are connected to the United Nations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio released a statement justifying the administration's decision.
The Trump administration has found these institutions to be redundant in their scope, mismanaged, unnecessary, wasteful, poorly run, captured by the interests of actors advancing their own agendas contrary to our own, or a threat to our nation's sovereignty, freedoms, and general prosperity.
The list includes organisations related to international cooperation on law, gender equality, peace, clean energy and the environment, and notably the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. The treaty, established in 1994, has a near universal membership of countries, runs the annual COP Climate Summit, and brokered the landmark Kyoto Protocol in 1997 and the Paris Agreement in 2015. The US withdrawal marks another blow for global action on climate change, but the EU Climate Commissioner has vowed to push on.
The decision by the world's largest economy and second largest emitter to retreat from it is regrettable and unfortunate. We'll unequivocally continue to support international climate research as the foundation of our understanding and work.
They are the latest in a growing number of UN organisations that Trump has pulled out of, including the World Health Organization, the UN Human Rights Council and UNESCO, as he continues to push his foreign policy agenda and signal to the world that it is his way or the highway.
EU states gave a provisional go-ahead on Friday for the bloc to sign its largest ever free trade accord with South American group Mercosur, more than 25 years since talks began and after months of wrangling to secure enough backers.
It's a free trade agreement more than 25 years in the making. On one side, Mercosur, the South American trading bloc, composed of Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, and Bolivia. The Southern Common Market represents more than 80% of South America's total GDP and has trade agreements with a number of countries, including China. On the other side, the 27 EU member states.
Overarching goal of all of us is to deliver a win-win agreement that never sells EU businesses short. In the case of Mercosur, we didn't just listen to concerns, we went further than ever before.
The aim is to do away with 90% of tariffs between the two zones and create a market of over 750 million people. That would mean about 4 billion euros in EU export tariffs scrapped and a reduction in the Mercosur bloc's high tariffs on car parts, dairy products, and wines. It's an idea much to the liking of European industry, particularly German car makers, who see the promise of new markets. But farmers in a number of EU countries are worried. They're concerned that the European market will be flooded with cheaper goods that aren't subjected to the same strict EU standards. South American farmers are permitted to use more pesticides and fertilizers, and with much larger farms benefit from lower costs and higher yields. European farmers say it's unfair competition and have been long protesting against it. Germany, Spain, and the Nordic countries all support the deal, particularly against a backdrop of global trade uncertainty fueled by U.S. tariffs. To win over deal skeptics, the European Commission has put safeguards in place that can suspend imports of sensitive farm products, as well as strengthening import controls while pledging to cut import duties on fertilizers.
Russia will free Laurent Vinatier, a French researcher serving a 3-year prison sentence for flouting laws requiring foreign agents to register with authorities. He will be exchanged for detained basketball player Daniil Kazaktin, accused by the U.S. of hacking. Russian media reported that Vinatier had been pardoned by President Vladimir Putin.
A ray of hope for Laurent Vinatier, the 49-year-old French researcher who's been sitting in a Russian jail for over a year could potentially be freed by Moscow as part of a diplomatic deal with French authorities.
There have been relevant contacts between our side and the French government. A proposal was made regarding Vinatier. The ball is now in France's court.
An advisor for a Switzerland-based NGO, Vinatier was arrested in Moscow in June 2024. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for failing to register as a foreign agent while collecting information about Russia's military activities. Earlier this year, Vinatier was also reportedly charged with espionage and could now face up to 20 years in jail. French authorities have slammed his 3-year sentence as extremely severe and the charges as politically motivated, while repeatedly calling for the scholar's immediate release.
None of the rumors and propaganda surrounding Vinatier are anchored in reality. We're calling on Russia to clarify these accusations and to free him as soon as possible.
The call had largely fallen on deaf ears until late December, when the Kremlin said it made an offer to free Vinatier, possibly as part of a prisoner swap deal with France. Such exchanges have become commonplace since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In 2024, several journalists and dissidents were freed by Moscow after a deal with the U.S., marking the largest prisoner swap since the end of the Cold War.
Myanmar began a second round of voting on Sunday in the country's first general election since a takeover that installed a military government 5 years ago. Voting expanded to additional townships, including some areas affected by the civil war between the military government and its armed opponents.
On Sunday morning, polls opened across a whole swathe of Myanmar for general elections after 5 years of military rule.
We're satisfied. Voting is better than not voting. It would be weird to sit by and do nothing.
But with the country's most recent elected leader still in detention, analysts question the junta's motives.
This is not about public consultation. This is about engineering an outcome where the military's favoured party wins a landslide.
Phase 1 did see a landslide for the USDP, the army's favoured party, with relatively low voter turnout at only 50%. And under a constitution dating from a previous era of military rule, a quarter of parliamentary seats will be reserved for the military, regardless of the popular vote. The army ousted State Councillor Aung San Suu Kyi in 2021, claiming she owed her position to massive voter fraud, something international observers say there was no evidence for. The 2021 coup cast the country into a bloody civil war with a death toll in the tens of thousands.
I want things to improve for the population after these elections. We want to get back to a peaceful situation.
Junta laws threaten those who protest or criticise the elections with up to a decade in prison. Former leader Suu Kyi has lost a great deal of credibility internationally, accused of inaction in the face of the Rohingya genocide, but remains the symbol of democracy in a country which has mostly known military rule since its independence.
The phrase shadow fleet refers to aging oil tankers that operate under false flags to bypass Western sanctions on Russian, Iranian and Venezuelan crude, a practice Russia has reportedly invested billions of euros in since 2022 to maintain its oil exports. But how these shadow or so-called ghost fleets function in practice is less widely understood. August Hackinson investigates.
The war in Ukraine and conflicts in the Middle East have triggered a surge in Western sanctions on oil exports, Russia, Iran and most recently Venezuela. The result, a growing parallel unofficial maritime network. These countries today rely on a so-called shadow fleet, vessels used to bypass sanctions and transport oil from sanctioned producers. A shadow ship is typically an aging vessel with murky ownership structures. Ships frequently change flags, often to countries unable or unwilling to enforce Western sanctions. Operators falsify registration details, vessels broadcast fake location signals, or switch off tracking systems altogether, and often carry out risky ship-to-ship transfers under the cover of darkness, all to avoid detection. The phenomenon is not new, but since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the fleet has expanded rapidly. By 2025, the number of falsely flagged ships worldwide had more than doubled to over 450. Thanks to the fleet, Moscow has largely managed to keep its oil exports moving. But mounting US pressure on these vessels could have major consequences.
Keep in mind that it's the same sanctioned oil tanker fleet that services all of the 3 sanctioned countries. If costs are going to increase for the sanctioned fleet because of what the United States is doing in Venezuela, those higher costs will spread to Russia, and Russia's going to have to lower its sale prices in order to clear the market with its buyers.
Those buyers are mainly India and China. Both currently benefit from steep discounts, often purchasing Russian oil well below the Western-imposed $60 per barrel price cap.
Pendants and brooches packed with artificial intelligence abounded at the Consumer Electronics Show, using cameras and microphones to watch and listen through the day like a vigilant personal assistant.
Paper-thin TVs, Lego that comes to life with light and sound, and binoculars that identify bird species in real time. This year's Consumer Electronics Show was defined by AI-powered innovation, a mix of genuine breakthroughs and eye-catching concepts that may never see a store shelf. Romanian deep tech company Dot Lumen's AI glasses for the blind could make shopping or even hiking possible for the visually impaired. The headset analyzes surroundings and helps a blind person on their daily commutes, replacing a guide dog.
A ton of AI in it. So we use AI to understand, for example, what's a safe surface, what is not a safe surface, to understand objects around and how you can interact with them, to understand if you're indoor or outdoor.
And Chinese company Roborock's Saros rover is a robotic vacuum cleaner with a pair of legs and motion sensors, allowing it to navigate the house alone and climb up and down the stairs, hoovering as it goes.
Means is that it utilizes AI and advanced algorithms in order to measure the space around it and be able to climb steps with its wheel leg system. But it's not only just steps and stairs, it is also ramps, slopes, curved stairs, snail type of stairs, carpeted stairs, all types of different surfaces that the wheel leg can handle.
France-based Y-Brush brought its smart Halo toothbrush, which not only cleans teeth in 20 seconds, but has gas sensors to detect health conditions through analyzing users' breath. But the AI surge has also given birth to solutions in search of a problem, like chargeable design-changing bags, lollipops that play music using bone induction technology, or even smart toys that grow and evolve like real pets.
A rare copy of the comic book that introduced the world to Superman and also was once stolen from the home of actor Nicolas Cage has been sold for a record of $248 million. The private deal for Action Comics #1 was announced on Friday. It eclipses the previous record price for a comic book set last November.
You're looking at $15 million worth of comic book history. That's the price fetched by a copy of Action Comics #1, which sold for 10 cents in 1938 and features the very first appearance of Superman.
This is the holy grail of holy grails of comic books. Without this comic book, we may not have any other superheroes. No Batman, no Wonder Woman, no Spider-Man, no X-Men, no Wolverine, no nothing.
The anonymous buyer could keep it sealed or leaf through the panels showing Superman's journey to Earth as a baby, his childhood feats of super strength and laser beam eyes, and his decision to use his powers for good. This particular copy has its own unique story. The actor Nicolas Cage bought it for $150,000 in the 90s before it was stolen from his LA mansion. It was found a decade later in an old storage container. Then Cage auctioned it off for more than $2 million. Now it's ballooned in value once again, and the marketplace which sold it says the Nick Cage saga is partly to thank.
It was an extremely high-grade copy, very prized, cherished by Nick Cage, sold to him by me, and then in 2000 it was stolen. And I think because of that and the recovery, it probably would be considered the most well-known comic book in the entire world.
The private sale blows the last record out the water. In November, Superman's first solo title from 1939 sold at auction for over $9 million.
It's 25 minutes before 8, and that's how we wrap up our international news. Thank you for staying with us. We go for an ad break. Don't go anywhere.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba research bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna senze ukukhiqiza lokusebenzisa.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
All right, you're watching Kusile Breakfast Show. It's 38 minutes after 7 now. The Kingdom of Eswatini is a very, very young country. It is young in spirit and it is also young in its numbers. And yet, for many young people, opportunity still feels distant. So the big question there is local innovation often struggling to find space to grow. Jobs are scarce, imports dominate our shelves, and local innovation continues to struggle to find space to grow. But what if the solution has been right here at home all along? What is the real answer to youth unemployment, to economic resilience and national pride? Lies in what we make, what we build, what we innovate right here at home in Eswatini. Well, this week, a peculiar people and the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries in Eswatini are formalizing a partnership through a landmark memorandum of understanding. At the heart of it is the Made in Eswatini movement, which is a structured economic platform that is aimed at building the next generation of job creators. We want to unpack now what this partnership really means, who it is going to benefit, and whether this could be the turning point for youth entrepreneurship in the Kingdom of Eswatini. Our conversation with Ellen Lloyd Hamusokwe, the head of research with the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries. Very good morning to you, Ellen. Welcome to the program. Let's start here. Why was it important for a peculiar people and the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries Eswatini to formalize this partnership now?
I think it's very. Oh, good morning. Again, sorry. In the morning we get too excited to get busy with work. I think one important thing we constantly push with Youth Chamber is the importance of actually working with other stakeholders. It's impossible for you to be able to change the world alone. So it's very important that you identify different stakeholders and understand exactly what are their mandates, and then try to see how you can be able to align with them in order to ensure that your organization's goals are achieved. And for us at Youth Chamber, one of the biggest problems that we are really trying to solve is youth unemployment. So it only made so much sense for us to be able to work with a peculiar people so that we ensure that this unemployment problem actually ends.
Yeah, I mean, of course, youth unemployment, I suppose, is the umbrella problem, but again, the downstream problems that have persisted for a very long time, and I'm sure you're more privy of them more than me. And from the top of my head, I can count barriers to entry. Those have been highlighted. Barriers to entry can be broken down into many facets. But if you were to submit an assertion here, what gap are you trying to close in Eswatini's youth entrepreneurship space?
Okay, so as head of research for Youth Chamber, I had to be able to ensure that I lead the youth, at least in business, towards sectors or markets that I actually know can actually grow, or they can be able to dominate at least. So when I was looking for the different sort of sectors, I discovered that actually the imports have constantly been increasing over the years. For the last 10 years, for example, the imports have increased over 1 billion. And you find that our imports are more than our exports. So what I started to understand about that was that we are actually importing a lot of these retail products that we can be able to provide. So that's when it only made sense for us now to start gearing the youth and saying that instead of trying to export first, let us first make sure that we ensure in our shelves we are producing as much to get inside so that at least we can be able to ensure that we are our biggest customer before we try to look for external customers. I think that will be a much more easier way to be able to manage and ensure that more jobs are created within the country.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that as head of research, one of your primary goals is identifying which sectors, the youth that are getting into entrepreneurship can thrive in. What are these sectors? Because there's a lot of sectors in entrepreneurship and in business, really. But, ones that you've identified as, let's say, the most conducive right now or the most ideal for our youth entrepreneurs to thrive in. What are those ones?
So right now, looking at the ecosystem and how things are set up in terms of the lack of barriers, the lack of barriers to entry as well as lack of access to markets. Looking at all of the problems, we at Youth Chamber would probably advise youth to be able to focus on the retail market. The retail market, or what I mean by that is that you see all of the different products that are within your general dealers. Though that's really where the money it actually is, and it's also better because those retail markets are usually cash based. So you don't really have some of the problems that you usually find with large corporations or big businesses when you're working with big businesses. But when you work with your local general dealer around your community, it becomes much more easier in terms of startup, where you don't have to be able to have a lot of capital in order for you to be able to produce something and actually provide it to your local general dealer. So it's very important that we start where we are. Start at your in your area. Don't try to first when you're starting out in a business, go to another town. Start in that same area that you're in. Find a place that you can be able to sell, and then start there. And to us, we've been able to identify the retail stores as the most basic, easiest place for you to be able to enter. And looking at the fact that the imports are consistently increasing, which means that we are not we are not producing any of or most of the items within the shop, and this is increasing. So that's from Youth Chamber's point of view, that's the first place that we would think that people should be able to go to.
Yeah. At the heart of this memorandum of understanding, I understand, is the Made in Eswatini movement, which you, as the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries Eswatini, as well as a peculiar people, have been quite intentional about saying it is more than just a campaign or just a movement. I want us to get into the practicalities of that. What do you mean in practical terms? What does this platform actually mean for a young entrepreneur watching us this morning?
I think it's a stance here of Eswatini actually taking a stand and taking control of its economy. We are saying that we are capable of producing.
Ellen Lloyd Hamusokwe is the head of research at the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries. We are just really drilling into the particularities of this memorandum of understanding that is set to be signed this week between the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries in Eswatini, as well as a peculiar people. Well, the last question that was posed to him was they have been quite frank around Made in Eswatini, the previous campaign that we've known, over the past 2 years that has been growing. He's explaining to us what they mean when they say it is not just a campaign or a movement now. And you were expounding on what the stance really is in practical terms for a young person that is watching right now. Ellen, if you may continue, you're back.
Yeah, so as I was saying, it's very important that we now start to understand and see Eswatini as capable market that we can be able to also produce as other countries. It might be small geographically, but that doesn't mean that we are incapable of actually producing half of the different products that we can be able to do. So what the Made in Eswatini actually is us Eswatini actually standing up, saying that this is us, this is our sort of piece of the pie that we can be able to sort of show the world that we are capable of actually doing. So I think it's actually a stance that we are ready now to actually produce. And now this is a time where more entrepreneurs should now actually start focusing on actually producing products rather than merely reselling.
Yeah. I think the honest truth is that our economy has experienced some very, poignant difficulties over the past couple of years, but especially during COVID-19, as well as the unrest that happened a couple of years ago. But the Minister for Commerce, Industry and Trade was quite frank around, creating programs that will get us back into that sustainable path. And indeed, we have been enjoying some of those programs. This one, and you did speak on it briefly when we started talking around the idea of, our imports being more than our exports, as well as what we produce locally. Our local shelves are indeed just full of stuff that has been imported. I want us to talk about the import statistics as market opportunities. How can young people practically identify products that we import and start producing them locally?
Okay, so I think that's where we actually come in and help out. We have been working on a list of 50 products that we will be releasing this week. Detailing exactly how much, and for an example, just to give you an idea of this, we discovered that peanut butter, with just peanut butter in 2023, we imported almost 32 million worth of peanut butter.
Right.
So with that said, that alone ends up becoming an opportunity for youth if they just focus on producing peanut butter. And then the difference now, what we've sort of discovered, or with our current value chain in terms of imports, is that when we're importing, the imports end up becoming dispersed around the country. So another thing that us at Youth Chamber have been doing is organizing different youth in different municipalities so that they can be the ones to now start to understand or capture the imports within their municipality. So that we are able to ensure that if we look at the 30 million, it's spread across, for example, the whole of all of the 4 different regions. But now if we position youth in the different regions, they can be the ones who are able to ensure that when the imports come, they are the ones actually taking advantage of that particular value chain.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm just shocked by the staggering number of the amount of peanut butter that we are importing in a kingdom where so many people continue to sell us peanuts. And I'm just, thinking about that value chain of peanuts and how it is being slept on as the youth will submit. Last year at the United Nations House, you unveiled your 2026-2028 strategic compass. We have just started 2026, and I want to ask you what stood out from that engagement last year for you that you feel like perhaps will indeed shape this partnership as we start 2026 and we move into 2028 and this continues to unveil itself.
I think an important thing that we want every youth to be able to understand is that if you want development, it has to come structured. You have to first organize yourselves, and then it can come in a sustainable way. Before the organizing, it's almost impossible. So what we've been doing, I think as I said earlier, has been organizing ourselves. So now that we have organized ourselves, it becomes much more easier for other stakeholders like peculiar people to come and work with organizations like Youth Chamber, because when they work with us, they're not just working, for example, with the national chapter. They're actually working with all of the different local chapters. That is, we have a chapter in Manzini, Malkens, Eswatini, Babane, Mangayane, and Ngwenya. And so when different organizations work with us, they're actually working with the different youth within these municipalities. So I think that's really where we've been going, that in order for us to move forward, or the next step we had to do was make sure that the youth in different municipalities are organized. So at least when the support comes, it comes in a structured manner.
Yeah. And I know that, there's been the confirmation around Mbabane as the official host city for the Made in Eswatini Consumer Fair until the year 2028. The big question is, why Mbabane, and what impact do you expect this to have on the city's economy?
I think it's very important that we start out exactly where we have competitive advantage or where at least it's much more easier, and then we pilot. So Mbabane is a perfect place in order for us to be able to pilot because it is our capital city, plus also our corporate capital. So it's the best possible place for us to be able to now actually pilot this, and then based upon the piloting, it becomes much more easier for us to spread out the same different support to the other different municipalities as well.
Yeah. And then we're hearing about the role of the U.S. Embassy in supporting youth entrepreneurship. How important are these partnerships? I mean, you did mention when we started our conversation today that as the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries, you are very, very honest around the idea that this current challenge of youth unemployment, as well as the other issues that persist around youth unemployment and unemployability cannot be won just by one entity. And you speak about partnerships. How important are these partnerships, and what real support can young business owners expect? And I want you to speak particularly about this U.S. Embassy partnership.
I think at the moment right now, it's very the partnerships are very important, especially if you look at the geopolitical environment right now. So now partnerships are almost like important because you can see a lot of funding is changing. A lot of the world itself is changing, but we need to be able to ensure that we still hold some of the different ties that we have to ensure support continually happens, because we never know what's going to happen tomorrow, and we never know what different opportunities might also come up that we can be able to ensure we benefit from these ties. So specifically speaking towards the U.S. Embassy partnership, their support is always important to be able to ensure that at least some of these activities are heard from grassroots all the way to the top, but also being able to ensure that the U.S. Embassy understands or is close enough to be able to understand the core problems, or even the support that they bring, and actually now becomes properly structured. So keeping them always around is very important, so that we are able to ensure that the support that we do get is actually structured to what we actually need, rather than getting support that is not detailed or tailored towards our problems.
Lloyd Hamosokwe, Head of Research at the Youth Chamber of Commerce Industries. Thank you for your time. And we certainly hope that this Memorandum of Understanding set to be signed this week between these two entities, a peculiar people and the Youth Chamber, will indeed give us the fruits that he has expounded on. And that is, our youth being fully immersed in retail as one of those industries that we see a great opportunity in, if we are going to, just decrease a little bit on importing more of the stuff that we can produce ourselves here at home, but also the partnerships that it speaks frankly on with other entities. We hope those will be amicable and that they will give us really, really sustainable and beautiful results. That is our conversation. We go for an ad break now. We'll be back with Lungalele to close the show.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.za.
Kude lesinye isikhathi ngaphandle kwalesi.
Aba-researche, bafunze.
Being risky means ukuthi nalokuwa kwayo kulula.
Nathi kufuna senze ukukhiqiza lokusebenza.
All right, it's 10 minutes before 8 o'clock. We've come to the end of our episode this morning. Thank you for tuning in. It is the first day of most of us this morning, the 12th of January. Abaningi babuyele emisebenzini sekuphelile sekaphelile ma holiday kahle kahle.
Yeah, anyway, we do want to say very productive week to you as we start off the week. But, you know, I think we were forgetting a very important detail. It's a very, very wet week and 100% rain yesterday. It is predicted that even today is going to be the case. And it's not going to be, you know, toning down anytime soon. This whole week is going to be very wet. So if you are driving, please be very, very careful on the roads. Roads are slippery, and pedestrians, please be wary of pedestrians. So otherwise, happy birthday to everyone that is born today. It's the 12th of January 2026.
All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a lovely day.